All right, guys, what's up, everyone? We got an OJ reacts here to a video from GameSpot. They said something along the lines of how Nintendo won the console war. Yeah, how Nintendo won the console war. A lot of people were asking me about this video. I had not watched the video because I don't need GameSpot to tell me anything overall in terms of console war and all that. And I'm not a console war type of person. I just go over the sales and numbers and stuff like that. And I want all the systems to do well. But people are telling me that there's a lot different in terms of what he says in this. So I want to know if there's any actual information that I find interesting, what I agree with, what I disagree with. So I thought, hey, let's make a video on it. Let's talk about it. Let's discuss it. Nintendo winning the console war, quote unquote. So let's take a look at it here.
Ladies and gentlemen, the console war is over. Nintendo won years ago, and they will continue to win unless the industry changes in a big way.
So we said years ago, so I'm guessing he's starting from the Nintendo Switch 1? Okay, we'll see.
Big statement, but hear me out. I'm not saying consoles as a whole are dying, and I'm not saying PlayStation and Xbox will stop making games altogether. What I am saying is that as prices continue to rise and exclusives become less exclusive, the proposition value of a traditional console is starting to fade, but not for Nintendo.
We're gonna do a little exercise.
So real quick, I just want to jump in right there. That basic statement is something that I've been saying for quite some time. The funniest thing that I saw, I remember it was Did You Know Gaming. They put out a video beforehand, essentially, I want to say doom posting, but essentially looking at a number of different things, saying that the Switch 2 could fail. And one of the things that they said in there was, look at the price of the system. The price of the system is $450, and it's now a comically outdated graph that they put up, or picture, because they put up the Steam Deck for $400. They put up the Xbox Series, I think it was S, the Xbox Series S for $300 or whatever, right? They put up all these systems, the PS5 before the price increases, and then we got a slew of price increases / discontinuations, and now the Nintendo Switch 2 is actually positioned right now at this point. Now, it could change. Switch 2 could get a price increase, but now since multiple price increases and discontinuations, Switch 2 is actually one of the better, newer systems in terms of price, considering Steam Deck is $550 for that model. Obviously, PS5 is back up to its 500, 550, or 750 for the Pro. Xbox Series X is $600, right? 600 plus or something. So yeah, that was just funny. But that basic thing there, I felt that was interesting, because I felt that they could have a good value proposition down the line as more new systems come out and the prices go up.
Here, think of all of the exclusive PlayStation 5 and Xbox games you can. I'll give you a bit. You're thinking? All right, now any of those that came to PC, cut those. Now any of those Xbox exclusives that also came to PlayStation, cut those. What are you left with? Not a lot.
Nothing really.
No,
Astrobot?
Not many. Now I'm going to read to you almost all the exclusives that have come to the Nintendo Switch in the last 5 years.
Oh, he's got a big list.
Animal Crossing New Horizons, Paper Mario The Origami King, Bowser's Fury, Mario Golf Super Rush, Mario Superstars, Metroid Dread, New Pokemon Snap, Pokemon Brilliant Diamond.
Oh man, that's a lot of games, dude. Okay, so to this point, this is an interesting point, because there are people online who feel that this is not a thing, and there are people who obviously know that this is a real thing. Exclusives matter when it comes to Nintendo. I think more so than Nintendo than anything, because Microsoft and Sony, they sell a lot of, well, more like Sony now at this point. Microsoft, obviously, sales aren't as good, but traditionally, they sell a lot because of third-party support. Third-party is what kind of drives a lot of the platforms. Sony gets a lot of the, okay, Call of Duty, FIFA crowd, stuff like that, right? That's what helps drive those systems. I think even at this point, Sony barely had many exclusive games this year, yet they were still selling okay, because you can buy it and you can get FIFA, there's Fortnite bundles, whatever the case is, right? Call of Duty. So I think that with Nintendo, exclusives are obviously heightened and even more important, plus they have more that do better. So I think that's really, if you're looking at it from a value proposition overall, Nintendo is kind of carving out their own niche in terms of a console war in a traditional sense. And I think with those exclusives, that's what helps sell the system, because Switch 2 still does not have the best versions or a lot of some of these big third-party games that launched this year, yet look at how well it's done. So I think that's where that part is coming from overall.
World, Donkey Kong Bonanza, Metroid Prime 4, Zelda Hyrule Warriors, Pokemon Legends EA. You get it. I needed that paper.
Yes, there are a lot of Nintendo Switch games that can only be played on a Nintendo console. Everyone knows this. It's why I bought a Nintendo Switch and Switch 2 on day one. That's why as of now, I will always buy Nintendo consoles. The value proposition for a Nintendo console is multiple, high-quality, first-party games in any given year. Since the Switch 2 came out in June, Nintendo has put out Mario Kart World, Donkey Kong Bonanza, Kirby Air Riders, Pokemon Legends EA, and Metroid Prime 4. Meanwhile, PlayStation has released Death Stranding 2 and Ghost of Yotei, two great games that will undoubtedly come to PC next year. There was a time when exclusives were the biggest selling point for all three consoles. I bought an Xbox 360 because I thought Gears of War looked rad and I knew Halo 3 would only be on the 360. I bought a PS4 because I wanted to play Naughty Dog's next game. That simply isn't the case anymore. With little patience, I can play nearly every PlayStation and Xbox exclusive on Steam. Not even just on my PC, but on a unified storefront.
For the first time, I think ever, I've taken my Xbox and packed it up. I don't use my Xbox. I haven't used it in a long time. I don't need to use my Xbox. Now, I understand the pain of building a PC, setting up a PC. It's a lot of work. It can be a little finicky. Something might go wrong.
But let's dig a little deeper though. A lot of people don't buy a console just for the exclusives. A big selling point is the reasonable price tag and convenience of owning a console over a PC. I like the idea of having a piece of tech that is designed for playing games first and foremost, but even this argument is starting to erode. The Xbox Series X has only gotten more expensive since it launched in 2020, and the PS5 Pro is $750. Sure, you may not be able to find a PC at a similar price range that packs the same punch as a PS5 Pro, but graphically we're starting to split hairs here. Do you remember that PS5 Pro video where Mark Cerny would zoom in like 5 times to show that the image was a little bit sharper? As a PS5 Pro owner, I'll be the first to admit that this is getting ridiculous. Look, there will always be a market for folks who want the best possible frame rates and resolutions, but as consoles and PC parts get more and more expensive, I have to imagine that.
I agree with what he has to say, like the general gist of it. When it comes to like the PS5 Pro and when it comes to the consoles getting more expensive, I get that, but there still is, I would say, value. Yes, a PS5 Pro is very expensive, but there still is value in getting that powerful box and having that experience where you hook it up to a TV without the shenanigans of PC. I know PC gaming is getting more and more comfortable to play on a TV, but it's still a PC at the end of the day. It still does not operate like a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox Series. I completely understand his point about Xbox packing it up. Listen, I've done the same thing. Microsoft has essentially eroded their whole exclusive situation. And if you're not part of Game Pass, then having an Xbox at this point, it's almost pointless. Just because, like, if you have a PS5 or if you have a PC or if you play on there, or if you have Nintendo, even with some of the games, then you can just play it there and then you get the exclusives, or you can just get like the power of the PC or other things. So having an Xbox Series X hooked up, if you're a multi-platform gamer at this point, just seems to be ridiculous, or just seems to be like there's no need, unless you're really into Game Pass, or unless you just have all of your achievements, you love that, your friends are on there, your multiplayer's on there, then I get that 100%. But I think there's a reason why that the console sales for the Xbox Series X and S have completely fallen off of a cliff. People just aren't seeing the value anymore. And to his point about the difference between looking, you have to zoom in to see the differences between the PS5, the PS5 Pro, the performance mode, the not. And I think it just goes back to saying, yeah, we don't really need these systems. Like, it's getting less and less when it comes to the power to even see the difference in them. And without unique software to truly take advantage of that system that offers something that separates it, where are we really going down at this point? You know what I'm saying? Like, what is happening overall, So I can see where he's coming from with this, as someone who also has a PlayStation 5 Pro, a Nintendo Switch 2, obviously day one, getting all of those games, when it comes to the big titles that came out. And of course, my Xbox just not being played anymore. I mean, it was dusty. Whereas my PS5, I mean, I still play it sometimes, although I haven't played it lately because Sony's really not releasing a lot of great first party games overall, and I want to see what they have first party. I'm not a big PC guy, so yeah, Interesting on that front. Let's go ahead and get back to the video here.
Contingent will shrink even further.
But I think it gets even more complicated when you consider the Steam Machine coming out early next year, or the first half of next year. To me, this thing kind of represents where consoles are going in the future, right? We are seeing a world where pretty much there's no such things as exclusives aside from Nintendo. Those are coming to everything. They're coming to Steam. You get a Steam Machine, in theory, you'd have access to most of PlayStation's exclusive library, all of Xbox's exclusive library. Sure, not all of those games come out day and date. I think a lot of Sony exclusives, they like to wait 6 months, sometimes a year. But I think considering everything Steam has going for it, the draw of buying a PlayStation day one because you need to play a specific game kind of isn't appealing anymore, especially when they're only releasing like 2 to 3 exclusives a year.
And looking ahead, it sounds like the next Xbox console and PlayStation 6 are catering to that hardcore audience who want the highest fidelity, at least based on what we know so far, which is not much. But as the line between consoles and PCs blur, the value proposition for a console gets thinner and thinner and thinner, especially as the price closes in on $1,000. Times are tough and folks are starting to get priced out of this. And look, if you're willing to spend that much on a console, when does it make more sense to just bite the bullet and build a PC or get a Steam machine? The cherry on top being that Steam is way more consumer friendly than Sony or Microsoft.
But I also think there's something else here that I don't think a lot of people talk about, and it is how Nintendo operates as a company versus less so PlayStation, but especially Microsoft.
There's a reason why Nintendo games are generally higher quality experiences. There are exceptions, sure, but Nintendo exclusives are well-designed, polished games that feel like premium products. Aside from a Pokemon game here or there, I've never picked up a Nintendo game concerned that it may not work. Sure, Nintendo games might not be for you, and that's totally fine, but they are more consistent than Sony and way more consistent than Microsoft.
Okay, so to this point here that he says here, this is the point that'll probably get him in the most trouble. This is the point that if you bring this up, or if you say something like this online, people will attack you because they associate, a lot of times they can't separate Nintendo and what they feel in terms of a, consumer or not consumer friendly from the actual games. Or you'll see people on YouTube that will sit here and make it seem as if a game, since it's disappointing to them, it is the worst game ever overall. Like it's the most terrible. Like look at the stuff from Metroid. Look at the stuff from Metroid Prime 4, for example. Metroid Prime 4 had so many different things, so many different issues, so many problems overall when it came down to it, when it comes to what people were saying, at least. And I think that a lot of people somehow don't separate that from it working or not working, or putting together a bust of a game like Concord or Redfall or stuff like that, where it's supposed to be a premium AAA experience and it ends up not being that at all. It ends up just not being that when it comes down to it. Nintendo doesn't put out stuff like that, even with the Metroid Prime 4, even with the Kirby Air Riders, even with the whatever you want to talk about overall, where it's just like broken or just bad or just gets shut down after 3 seconds like we saw before. So I think that's where it's going to get them in trouble, but it's correct. If you buy Kirby Air Riders, Metroid Prime 4, even Pokemon Legends ZA on Switch 2, or if you buy Mario Kart World, Donkey Kong Bonanza, these games are all super polished, all work, and don't necessarily fall up like how Concord did or Redfall did or some of those. Now, have they had some of their games that are like that? Sure. 1-2 Switch, everybody 1-2 Switch. There's been some stuff like here and there, right? Heck, even with Pokemon, but he acknowledged that Pokemon sometimes, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, right? That had its issues, but I mean, that was a number of years ago. We're talking about Switch 2 going forward here, but he said, hey, Pokemon kind of exclude that. But when it comes to Nintendo's games, they are all good when it comes down to that, So I think that is a big thing as well with this.
Especially when you consider the sheer volume of exclusives they put out. The way I see it, there are two reasons for this. One, Nintendo isn't trying to chase cutting-edge graphics and instead opting for distinct art styles. These past couple generations have really shown how higher fidelity presentation leads to longer development times, bigger teams, and larger budgets. By doubling down on artistic style, Nintendo has largely been able to avoid this side of development.
I love a good Sony AAA experience. Ghost of Yotei was a lot of fun. Big fan of The Last of Us, but those games take so long to make, and they're only going to take longer unless the technology or workflow changes, right? So production budgets are expanding, they're ballooning, but also it requires way more staff. You need hundreds, if not thousands of people working on these games, and the costs just keep going up and up and up.
Now,
This is another thing that he 1000% nailed. The cost of that's why a lot of these companies are turning to AI. They're turning to AI because there's no way, even from the PS4 generation and up, there's no way that you're going to be able to increase the fidelity, increase the graphics, increase everything that you want it to be, but then actually get the games out in any decent amount of time if you're looking at it. That's why a lot of these companies are turning towards AI. They are getting so just big and massive in terms of the development scope and budgets and everything. It's just getting absolutely insane. Like even with Assassin's Creed, I think even like last generation or so, like they were having like 1,000+ person teams like that were actually working on the games. Call of Duty has been that way. So how do you manage that? Like Nintendo's been able to kind of curtail it to, once again, sometimes being it can be positive in that sense, right? You can keep the budgets down, you can keep the games going, but then also sometimes it can be a little bit of a negative when your hardware can't keep up with the games, when you're having frame rate issues and stuff like that. I think that, which I've said before in the past, the Switch 2, in my opinion, is the perfect balance of that. Now, maybe not for third parties, but if they actually built the games with gameplay first in mind, or built it with, hey, the Switch 2 specs in mind, I think that this could be a great balance in terms of development cost, performance, and ease of use. Being able to play the games anywhere that you want, being able to have it to where, look, you're going to get an experience that's anywhere between, a PlayStation 4 Pro and Xbox Series S. You're going to get that, and you can make it look great. You can make it look great. You can make it look, run good. That's a good power of a system. So I think that is where I think he nailed it when it comes down to when it comes to the production costs and stuff like that, man. That was a great point, and I see exactly what he's trying to say when it comes to that.
Two, and probably more importantly, Nintendo doesn't lay people off, at least not in the same way Microsoft has this year. Institutional knowledge is a thing, and when you're constantly bleeding employees and relying on contract work, a lot gets lost in the mix. Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild exists because developers like Eiji Aonuma have been working on Zelda for decades. Now, obviously there are some cultural differences at play here, but that doesn't change the fact that Nintendo has consistently put out some of the best games of all time in just the last decade.
So another incredible point that a lot of the people that just want to act crazy online do not want to talk about. This is a point that I'm glad that he brought up. This actually ended up being a pretty good video. But now that I'm looking through everything, a lot of people do not want to talk about that because their favorite companies, or a lot of their favorite companies, lay people off, get rid of people, do all these things that would be considered, at the end of the day, that is anti-consumer to lay off a lot of people. It is not a good thing. Look at stuff like what happened with the Initiative and with Xbox. Look at what happened, obviously, overall, Concord and the situation that's going on there. It is not good when you're losing developers, when you're canceling games, when you're not following through on your promises with games that you said were going to come out or were going to be supported for X, Y, and Z time. It's not just the developers. A lot of schizo content creators do not want to talk about this because it completely destroys their evil narrative of Nintendo, or their evil, oh my god, they're the worst ever for consumers. It completely destroys that. Now, obviously, Valve doesn't do that either, but Valve barely puts out anything overall. When it comes to first-party games, Valve, they don't have that many developers there. They don't put out that many games. They really only have a small pool of games that they have, or what they support, or what they do. It's very small in comparison to a major company like Microsoft, Nintendo, EA, Sony, blah, 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 right? So that point is something that people just don't like to talk about. The biggest, like I said, really angry, people online and all that, they don't want to put that out because it makes Nintendo look good. And on top of that, it goes against everything that people are trying to say, like what we need to do. We need people to have more jobs. We need people to have security. We need people to feel comfortable in order to create a game. How comfortable are you going to feel if you're always potentially going to get fired, or if you don't know you're going to have your job? How comfortable are you going to feel creating the best games in the world? How comfortable are you going to feel being part of a company when your homies just got laid off and you could be next? It doesn't create a good atmosphere. It doesn't create a good way for people to play games. And that's something that people just don't want to acknowledge overall when it comes down to it. So yeah, that was also a very good point too, you know?
So look, I'm not here saying that, in 10 years, Xbox and PlayStation are going to be gone and Nintendo will rule everything. I don't think that'll be the case. I think there will still be plenty of Sony developed and published games. I think there will still be hardware from both Xbox and Sony. I'm less confident about Xbox than Sony. I think the PlayStation 5 has sold like 84 million units at this point, so I think Sony is safe. But what I am saying is that this proposition value of consoles, of platforms, is getting very nebulous. There is less and less of a reason to spend almost $1,000 on a console when you can build a PC, get way more out of it. Meanwhile, over here we have Nintendo, which is still kind of fulfilling that proposition value of a console. You buy a Nintendo console and you have access to a bunch of exclusives that you can only play there. It gives me a reason to buy a Nintendo console.
And look, I'm not saying that every platform holder needs to become Nintendo. Nintendo has its fair share of issues that are worth examining and criticizing, and their business strategy can't be replicated. I'm also not saying to ditch your consoles and go out and build a PC right now. What I am saying is that now, more than ever, especially as prices continue to rise, there are fewer and fewer incentives to buy into the Xbox or PlayStation ecosystem. The only console that still consistently gives me a reason to turn it on is my Nintendo Switch 2.
When the next Xbox and the PlayStation 6 come out, honestly, I may not buy them. And that'll be the first time since the PlayStation 2 and Xbox. That'll be the first time ever. Not even that. That'll be the first time ever where I'm not going to get the big Xbox and PlayStation console, because there's just not a reason to. There's not a reason. But I will still be purchasing Nintendo consoles if they continue this business strategy. So is the console war over? Has Nintendo...
Okay, so a couple different things here in terms of what he has to say. With the last part, I have heard a number of people say this. Now, a number of people doesn't mean everyone, and I think that, once again, what he said with, yes, Microsoft is safe, or no, not Microsoft, maybe. Well, who knows? I don't know if Microsoft's going to be making systems in 10 years or so. I'm not sure how Microsoft's going to work out. We'll see, right? We'll see. They might still make, like a PC-type system in 10 years or 20 years. We'll see. Sony's definitely safe, right? They've got their 80-plus million, probably 90 million, not at this point after the holiday. They had a big holiday, so that's going to be good. But what he's saying what he's saying is definitely some of the stuff that I feel when it comes to PlayStation 6 or the next Xbox. I don't feel excited at all. And the reason why I don't feel excited at all is because they have not given me enough hype with these systems. Usually when you're ready for the next system is because you feel like they've delivered on the current system. It's like, well, wait a minute. Why should I order a new meal when I'm not done with my current meal? And that's kind of how I feel right now with the Xbox and with PlayStation. With Nintendo, when the Switch 1 was on its way out and we had Switch 2, we were stuffed. We were full. It was like banquets over and over. I mean, there are so many exclusives and there are so many different games to play. I felt that they had pushed that system to its limits. I felt that we had gotten pretty much everything from the start to the finish. We had gotten a number of games. It was time to move on. Heck, they even had Xenoblade Chronicles X at the end of the system's life, right? Like right before. So, and there's still a couple Switch 1 games. Heck, there's Metroid Prime 4 that you can play on the Switch 1. So we have been overstuffed. So I felt that it was right. It was time. I feel ready to move on. What are all the big games? From an exclusive standpoint, why you buy these consoles, by the way, because Microsoft and Sony sold these consoles also on having exclusives. what is all the stuff that I feel stuffed on when it comes to gaming with Xbox or PlayStation? Xbox, it's almost nothing when it comes down to like exclusive games. I mean, they have stuff, but they just purchased a bunch of third-party games or third-party companies, and then those companies still just release games on PlayStation, like Call of Duty, for example, or like Overwatch. All that stuff's still just on everything. So, okay, I guess I got a PS5. I'll probably play it on there. When it comes to Sony, they've delivered on some good first-party games. They've delivered. They've got Ratchet and Clank. They've got, they've got stuff that I've bought over the years, but it's nowhere near as much as I used to buy in past generations, like with the PlayStation 3 or the PlayStation 2. It's just not up to that level. And this past year, you can look at it, 2 games, Death Stranding and Ghost of Yotei. Only one of those games I was actually interested in with Death Stranding. I need at least maybe 4 or 5 games per year. I don't think that's too much to ask for, but Sony has struggled all generation to deliver 4 or 5 games per year. They've rarely done that. So there's just a really small pool of exclusives that I want to tap into the PlayStation 5 for. Now, there's a lot of games. Don't get me wrong. I got a ton of PS5 games, and I've played a lot of stuff on there. I played SMT5 Vengeance. I played Metaphor ReFantazio. I played a lot of great stuff, but the exclusives on there have dwindled, like you said. So I'm not really feeling full on the PlayStation 5. And I have a PS5 Pro. PS5 Pro is, once again, $750. I got it for $700 before the price increase. But yeah, and I'm not really feeling full on that proposition just yet. So I'm not excited for a PS6. And when a PS6 does come out, so what? Even more better graphics? You know what I'm saying? Like, most of Sony's games already run at full resolution, 1440p or higher, or right around there, and 60 FPS. If you have a PS5 Pro, their games run and look incredible. So what? Now you're going to run it at 4K, 120 FPS? Okay, that's great, I guess. But I mean, what's the difference? What's the change outside of it? Just looks better overall when you're not offering that value proposition of consistent games every single year. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't know. We'll see about the Steam Machine. We'll see about some of the other stuff that he said there. But, like I said, it ended up being a better video than I thought that it would be, and very interesting nonetheless. So what do you guys think that are watching? Of course, people live watching, and of course, if you're watching on the video on demand, if I put it up there, what do you guys think? Let me know. Of course, like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff, and we'll see you guys for the next reaction video or the next video just in general. All right, guys, peace.